Hi everyone, I'm Nico, and today we're going to look at the Radar API script for Roll20. This script allows a player to detect various types of creatures or tokens on the map and presents them with this radar screen output. And this allows them to see where in relation to their token other types of tokens are. So, for example, the paladin that you just saw me click on and use divine sense is detecting the various undead, celestials, and fiends in the area. And in the output here, we see these blue tokens. Those are the undead. This red one is a fiend, and there are no celestials in play right now. We also have that rendered out here in this table format, which gives a more precise count of how many squares away the various creature types happen to be. For this one, you'll notice this is in red. That means that this particular token is invisible. That is, in this example, it's on the GM layer. It's this skeleton right here. So this script can be used to detect tokens of various types, undead, celestials, fiends, but then you could also configure it to, say, look for various magic schools if you wanted it to work as a detect magic spell. And in this video, we're going to see how to set up the macros in order to make that happen. But because this is an API script, you do need a pro account in order to use it. Before we dive in, I'd just like to thank Roll20 for sponsoring this video. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is go out and grab the radar script. At the time of this recording, the radar script is available in the one-click install. However, the version I'm using is from this page right here. I'm going to include a link to this page down in the video's description. This is the latest and greatest version of the script at the time of this recording. So that's the one that I'm grabbing. I'll pop a card up in the upper right corner there if you don't know how to load a script from outside of Roll20. You'll see how to do that really easy. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to David M., the script's author. He did a fantastic job with this script. So if you enjoy using this script, pop over to the forum, give David a shout out. I'm sure he'd appreciate that. Okay, so how do we make this script work? So the first thing you need to do is create a character called Radar Ping. And this Radar Ping character needs to have a transparent token set up as their default token. And I'll put a link down in the video's description about where you can download a 1x1 unit transparent ping. So just to run through that process real quick, you would go out to where you had your transparent ping in your library. So I've got mine right here. Grab your transparent ping, put it somewhere on the board that you're going to be able to find easy enough, like right there. And then what you're going to do is set this as the default token for your radar ping character. Just come in here, click edit, and then it'll be set default token. So you'll be able to click, it'll look like this, where you say use selected token, and now it's blank. You save changes. And that's it. You don't need to make any other tweaks. You don't need to set that this token represents anybody or anything like that. But you do need to have that, because what's going to happen is when the detection occurs, this transparent ping is going to get overlaid on the other tokens. And that's what's going to actually highlight when we detect the creatures or detect the magic or whatever it is that we're doing. All right, so I'm just going to delete that real quick. Well, I'm going to bring up the macro that I was showing you a little bit earlier. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say divine sense, and let's have a look at what makes this macro tick. Okay, so the first line that we've got right here is radar. Makes sense, right? We're using the radar script. Then we have the range tag, and range is what determines how far away the individual can sense, how far the radar detection is going to go. And there's a couple of different ways you can specify that. In this example, we're actually doing some math. We're saying 12 times 70. Now, what that means is we are looking out 12 70 pixel units on the map. So that's going to be a range of 60 feet on a grid that uses 5-foot squares. So you can do that. You can also say that you want to do this in, say, 30 feet. So that will use that range as well. So it's up to you in terms of how you want to do it. I like personally to use the 30-foot moniker instead, because it's just a little easier for me to wrap my head around and I don't have to do any math. The wave spacing is how much space is going to be between the waves. So you saw earlier when we actually ran the macro, there's a small amount of distance in between each one. This is saying how many pixels is between each wave. The wave delay is how much time you pause before the next wave appears on screen. So you saw we have that rippling effect out here. So the wave delay is 50 milliseconds between each wave. That's what we're going with right now. And then each of those waves stays on the screen for 200 milliseconds. That's what the wave life is all about. Then we have the pinglife, and that's how long each token is going to remain highlighted on the screen. So if we run this again, you're going to notice that the tokens highlight in blue or in red, and they stay that way for a couple of seconds. That's controlled by this pinglife. Next up is the layers. So where can the divine sense detect in this case? So I want the paladin to be able to see things on the GM layer, the token layer, and the map layer. If you only wanted it to be the token layer, you could take these other ones out. But I'm going to leave it with all three because I want it to be able to detect everything. That's what allows him to detect the enemies that are invisible, for example. Now, charfilter, this next section, allows you to ping and detect tokens where a particular condition is met from the character sheet. So what we're saying is we're looking on the character sheet and we're looking in the NPC type attribute for celestials, fiends, and undeads. So if I go to my skeleton here, I'm going to alt double click to open up its character sheet, and we go to the attributes and abilities section, we're going to see that its NPC type, if we come down here, includes medium undead. So we are going to match on the word undead in the NPC type. Similar deal with the fiends, and if there are any celestials out there, we're looking in NPC type for the phrase undead, fiend, or celestial. And then we can indicate what color these NPC types will be highlighted in with this hash mark syntax. So you see we're going to make the celestials highlight in yellow, the fiends will highlight in red, the undead in blue. And then if the NPC is undetectable, like if it is immune to divine sense or something like that, that's what this non-detection flag is saying. It's saying if the NPC is undetectable, then we will not have it register with the divine sense. Next up is title. So we're calling this divine sense, and if you look in the output, we see right here that it is divine sense. So that's what that's doing. And then we also have this silent tag, and what this is doing is saying whether or not information will be written to the chat. This information is being whispered to the player right now. If we only wanted this to just do the animation, right? If we only wanted to see this effect and have the highlight happen very briefly and then everything went away, we would set this silent to be yes. And then the player doesn't get this output in the chat, they would only get the visual. But I like to keep that. Another nice thing to add here is add GM to silent, because then you as the GM will also have the divine sense output whispered to you. So now you'll have the exact same output that your paladin does, and if they have questions or anything, you're both on the same page in terms of what you're seeing. The units, this can be feet or kilometers or U for just units, whatever it is you'd like it to be. I'm going to switch it back to be feet here. Graphoptions determines how this radar screen will be shown. So right now I've got it set to grid circle. I could change that. I could make this grid, just grid. And if we do that, then the output does not have the circles included. You can also have grid reticle. And if you don't know what a reticle is, you do now. It gives you this star pattern going across it. Personally, I like the grid circle approach because it just reminds me more of a radar screen. Helps me, it's just easier for me to visualize and go with. Now the output, I've got that set to be graph and table, which means we're getting both the radar screen and the table. If we just wanted the graph, we could take that out. And then, you see now we only have the graph. If we just wanted the table, we could do that. And now we only get the table. So it's totally up to you in terms of how you want to do it. I would like to have both personally. And then there's one more thing I want to add to this, and that's going to be -- capital L lowercase o, capital S. That's line of sight. And we're going to set that to true. And what this means is walls will block the paladin's ability to detect other creatures. So he will need line of sight in order for detection to work. So you know how Divine Sense works in 5e, stone or lead or stuff like that can block it. This is effectively emulating that. So let me clear the chat output real quick. And if we run the command again, we see here we've got these two skeletons, one of which is invisible. We've got line of sight on the fiend. We've got this skeleton right here. We've got another one right there. What I'm going to do is put another skeleton down here. All right, and if I jump over to the walls layer real quick, I've just pressed the comma key to do that. You can see my paladin does not have line of sight now. The walls are blocking his line of sight to this skeleton token. And in order for one token to have line of sight from another token, all the four corners of that token's square, so here, 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 and here, have to be blocked from this token's view. So my token right here cannot see any of these points and does not have line of sight to the center of this token as well. Those are the kind of the 5 points that we are using in order to determine whether or not one token has line of sight to another. So because no corners are visible to this token and this token's center is not visible to this token, it is not considered to have line of sight to them. So I'm going to jump back to the object layer here. And so now if I run this again, we see that that skeleton over here is not showing up because the paladin doesn't have line of sight. If I set this to false and go again, now you see he shows up. So you have control of whether or not you want walls to block this. Now, of course, in order for that to work, you do need to have dynamic lighting turned on the map, and you do need to have walls there. Those are 2 prerequisites in order for this to work. But having that on there really helps make it a much more realistic experience because now the paladin doesn't see that skeleton over there. He's got walls blocking him. He can't detect that undead is on the map. So that's how you can do Divine Sense using the Radar API. But I also want to take a quick look at how you can use it to create a Detect Magic effect. Now, Detect Magic is going to work very similar to what we did with the Divine Sense macro, but there's a little bit more setup in advance. For starters, you're going to want to create a character sheet for each school of magic that you want to be able to detect. So abjuration, conjuration, divination, enchantment, evocation, illusion, necromancy, and transmutation should all have their own character sheet. You'll see right here I've got all but transmutation, so let's walk through setting that one up right now. I'm going to create a new character here. I'm going to name that character Transmutation. And now what I need to do is give this character a token, a transparent ping, just like we did with the radar ping character. So what I'm going to do is go back to the art library. I'm going to grab my transparent again. I'm going to drag it on. And what I'm going to do is actually double click the transparent token. I'm going to come down to the bottom here and I'm going to give it a 0-foot square radius that the players cannot see or edit, and I'm going to give it a tint color, and the tint color I'm going to give it this light purple here. So I'm going to select that. With that done, now I'm going to go back up to the top here. I'm going to go to gmnotes, and I'm going to put in transmutation into the gmnotes. And this is going to become important when we actually run the detect magic macro, because what it's going to do is look to the gmnotes to figure out what school of magic this particular item or statue or whatever it is that we're detecting is from, and save it. Okay, and now it's got that purple highlight to it. So I'm going to select that again and say use selected token. So what that's going to do now, when I save changes here, is when I drag the transmutation character out onto the board, it's going to have that highlight onto it. So we'll just do that real quick. There we go. And so now I have different colors set up for each of my different magic schools, so it's easier for me to differentiate who's who here. So now that I've done that, what I can do is place these tokens in spots around my wizard. So I'm just going to put tokens for each one. All right. And I'll delete my original transparent token. Okay, and now let's take a look at the macro itself. So if I come in here and I go to my detect magic macro, and we'll scoot this guy over to the side a little bit and make him a little bit bigger. What we're looking at here is very similar to what we did earlier. We've got the radar macro. We're going out 30 feet. There's 35 wave spacing, wave delay, ping life. This is all pretty much exactly the same as what we saw with the divine sense. The ping life's a little bit longer here. We're detecting on all three of the layers. The difference between what we did with divine sense versus what we're doing with detect magic is this flag right here, this tokfilter flag. So in the divine sense Mac, we were using a filter to look at what was on a character sheet. Here we're looking to filter what's on a particular token. And so what we're saying here is look in the GM notes of the tokens that are in range, and if those GM notes include abjuration, then we're going to highlight the token in purple. If we see conjuration, then we're going to highlight it in orange, and so on and so forth. And then we've got our line of sight. That's active. Detect magic is the title. The units are going to be in feet. In this one, I'm not using the radar screen, so it's just going to look like this. We actually have to select a token in order for it to work. There we go. And there we go. We've got our abjuration, conjuration, divination, and so on about where things are. All of these are showing up in red because all of the auras that I created are actually on the GM layer. So to the player, they're going to be invisible, but to the wizard's senses with detect magic, they are available. Now, of course, you can add in the graph options like we saw earlier with divine sense. If I test this out right now, we'll see that there we go. We've gotten our colors here, but you'll notice these other ones didn't pop up right. And the reason is I made a minor miscalculation with my token filter here. For some colors, you have to provide the hexadecimal value rather than the name. So I want conjuration to show up as orange. I've come out here to colorhex.com and I found that this is the hexadecimal equivalent for orange. So I'm going to grab that and paste it in here like so, and then test the macro. Okay, now you see that it shows up. So for anyone that you have that isn't showing up here, like purple doesn't show up either, I'm going to need to fix that for my abjuration. So if I just come out here real quick and I look up purple, I've got a couple of different colors here, but I'm going to use this color for my purple. And then that will take care of that. So if you do run this through and you don't see the colors that you're expecting, or don't see everything showing up like it should, see now everything's there, it's because you need to provide a hexadecimal equivalent for the color name. Okay, so I've just gone through and I've made corrections for a couple of other colors, and I've put all the different schools of magic onto the map near my wizard. So let's go ahead, let's give this a try. Radar ping, there we go, and there we go. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different schools of magic available, and we can see the distance to each one of them. They're all showing up in red because all of the aura tokens that I placed are on the GM layer. But there you go. That's how you can create both detect magic and divine sense using the radar API. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing. And until next time, folks, have a great day.